if Coach Gundy knew me and addressed me by name, I'm flattered because I really respect what he does. So that's flattering. There are option components of what we do. It's certainly not all we do. It's a part of what we do. As we know, and we've talked here before about putting stress on defenses and making sure that they're very option sound in what they do as individuals and personnel wise. Everything that we're doing, I think, is important. You know, we want to, like I've said before, as much stress as we can put on the opponents. We want to be the most stressful team in the country to prepare for. And when you can put option components, what you're doing, that adds to that element. So, yeah, I mean, there's components of that in there. What did he say exactly again?
He said you were like a traditional wishbone guy.
Traditional wishbone guy.
And he said
Again, I did play in almost a traditional wishbone offense back in college. So if you knew that, I'm flattered.
And then he said, let me just find it, but essentially he said, you guys do a lot of things with pulling guards and tackles over, and that a lot of the run concepts in your offense spring from the triple option.
Yep. Well, you better be option sound in what we're doing. So he's right on that for sure.
Hey, Andy, with Oklahoma State, they do the 3-3-5.
Mm-hmm.
Is that different for you to prepare for?
Well, you see now what's happened in our league that's become very, very prominent. And you can see that starting to spread a little bit more amongst other, leagues in college football, and there's a reason people do it. And, they're, and a credit to what they're doing defensively, you can see that they're growing every week and getting better every week with what they're doing schematically. So, statistics lie, and liars use statistics. They're getting better every week defensively with what they're doing schematically. And so we'll have our hands full. And I'd like to believe that we are too, right, as a football team, right? And so I think when you look at teams that are playing good football in the months of October and November, that's a common theme. That you see improvement, you see better understanding, you see players, having a vested interest in their own personal growth and getting better throughout the course of a season and not letting things that might distract them from wanting to do that, right? The emotions involved in playing a season, injuries or whatever it might be. But I think when you see teams that are doing a good job of playing at a championship level, they have that in common. You're like, man, they're just getting better every week.
Do a lot of teams in the MAC use the 3-3-5, or did you
in the MAC
before you came?
Before we left, no. No, I can't speak to it now though.
Yes. Then how over time has that helped you scheming against it or playing against it when you've got more reps against it?
Well, I think when we were, I forget who we were playing, but somebody asked a question here about, when did you first look at films, right? Okay, when did you first start looking at the opponent? Maybe at the Illinois week, perhaps. I said, when we first look at them in the spring, we evaluate who we're going to play in the season, how many teams are running these kind of defenses or this kind of defense, and things that we need to do to attack it to make sure that we're getting reps of those things moving forward through spring and fall camp. Because there's nothing worse than spending all spring and fall doing this, and then you get into game weeks and you start all of a sudden have to do something completely different. So this defense, because the number of teams that do this schematically, we prepare for it all year round now. And what we do, we make sure we work those combinations. We make sure we identify, who those players are. They know the third safety. They know the coverage terms. They being our players, and it's always in your thoughts and in your minds. So we spend a lot of time talking about it.
Is there anything different about Oklahoma State this year? Obviously, they've got a new defensive coordinator. Are they doing anything different schematically?
Well, yeah, schematically, we just talked about with being a three safety defense now, which is a pretty decent change from what they were, the previous year. So, and as I pointed out, the fact that they're getting better every week shows you their commitment to doing it, right? But from a personnel, there are some similar players and some aren't. Some are in different spots, But like college football nowadays, every week you're never sure who's going to be out there, from injuries to new players to transfers and all that. It's you very rarely do you see, oh, that guy was there 3 years ago. You don't see that stuff as much anymore for whatever reason. So there are some same players, but their scheme is different.
We heard from Lance about how last week a few guys had missed some time in practice due to various ailments and illnesses and whatnot, and offensive line was still able to come out and deliver that performance they did. Just what is it about your offensive line that makes them able to be so cohesive even when they've got people switching in and out?
Well, I think you had just said what's really important is the cohesiveness. Is you have a lot of guys who are on the same page on what we're doing, right? And those 5 guys, you don't see the left guard thinking that he's supposed to be going here, and the center's thinking he's supposed to be going here. And that's a credit to all of them to understand what we're doing. But there's a trait that they carry in that they're being coachable. And I've said in this room before, I personally am the hardest on that group, having been a former one. And I have said in this room before that your program, if you want a good snapshot of a program, look at their offensive line. How do they play? How do they gel? What's their temperament? That's a good indicator of your culture. That's a great microcosm of a culture of a team. And so I put that pressure, if you will, on them to make sure that they embrace that responsibility, if you will. And so they respond to that, and they go out there and they play their asses off. Because they did. They played really physical last Saturday.
With Jalen missing time, obviously Cole Ballard, goes up to backup quarterback and everything. What progression have you seen from him over the year that you trust if he had to get on the field at some point?
I think if you were to go back and look at some of the transcripts from questions in fall camp and things like that about him, his ability to orchestrate, if you will, all those things that we're doing is at a level as for a freshman that really puts him in a really unique stratosphere. So he manages that stuff fantastically well. He, much like I've been saying about a lot of our players, is getting better every week, right? Okay, and he embraces this opportunity as players should, because what typically happens during the fall, and if you could just imagine being a college player, right? And you're so excited to come in to do college football for the first time in your life, and you get there and you lift and you train and you see your body start to change in a matter of weeks, right? Because you're eating and training at a level that's so different. And so you have all this, excitement and enthusiasm. And then you go to fall camp, and the way we practice, everybody gets reps. Okay, so he's doing this. And again, I'm sharing this story about him and other players. Now, what changes for a lot of guys, especially when they first get to college, is then the games start. And they don't play as much. But they had all this enthusiasm and excitement, and here I'm getting bigger, faster, and stronger, and all this. I'm not playing quite yet. And of course, this isn't everybody, but it's most of them. And so what happens is you kind of all of a sudden emotionally have to figure out how to overcome something like that. Like, man, I'm getting bigger, faster, stronger. I'm still not big and fast and strong and smart enough. Okay? And there's usually a little dip or a plateau that occurs for most players mentally, right, physically, as you get into September and October. And the credit to Cole, he's been able to continue to elevate and rise and step up every week. Right, so I'm just sharing that as if you could just imagine being that age and going through that in a matter of you graduate high school, you go to college, June and July and August, and September, what am I playing? Right, it's hard. It's hard to go through, and so how you respond to that is what really allows people to put themselves in a position when, like him, he gets a moment, he'll be ready. He's responding the right way.
Daniel Highshaw's on a comeback player of the year watch list. Just how impressed have you been with his production this year?
Awesome. Really, really impressed. As you can see with him, and much like Devin, because I think someone asked this question maybe a week or two ago, you can see how they're starting to diversify themselves within the offense and able to do different things and line up in different spots. And there's no question that when him and those other guys are, Daniel and Dev are touching the ball, I mean, there's some things that people are going to like, do we really want to make sure this guy is in a one-on-one situation to tackle that guy? And they're a great compliment, because when you watch Daniel run the football, you mean he's going to run you over now. But he's also got the speed to run right by you. He's also got a little bit of the twitch, right, to juke you out. And you get there in Devin, who has really, embraced the patience and the understanding of whatever's doing there. There's just a great punch-counter-punch combination. And you can argue which one's the punch and which one's the counter-punch any day of the week. So I'm fired up for those guys. And then you go last week, and then we start talking about running backs. Duff goes in the game, he almost hits 102, right? And, so we want depth in that room. But to Daniel specifically, to come back, the way he has, and I'm proud of him, and I'm fired up for him, right? And it's good. It's been fun to watch and be part with him.
What's their role as leaders? All three of those guys, really.
Their role as leaders, probably, similar in the sense of, they're all their own individuals, so some maybe talk more than others, and some are maybe more about action. But I appreciate the most about all three of them together, and this is probably true of a lot of positions, and really what all coaches want in a position, is that they're all making each other better. Because it's hard to, let's say, Devin, it's hard for him to ever take his foot off the gas in terms of how he's preparing, because he sees two other guys behind him who aren't going to do it. And so they all collectively are making each other better. So that alone in itself, when our team can see those individuals going against each other every day in practice and making each other better with how they're training, how they're doing it, that's a big part of leadership, right? And so, you know, they're happy for each other's success, which I think is important, you know, because it's easy today to be jealous and everyone wants theirs. And I think if you were to watch when one guy goes and scores a touchdown, the first guy to meet him on the sideline is probably the other one, right? So I think that's really cool and special.
Do you sense, I know you guys are similar when it's Jalen or when it's Bean, and things don't change a whole lot, but do you sense when maybe Jalen's been out, that running back room is like, okay, we'll take a little more of this now?
Well, I don't know that they you know, feel any different one way or the other that way about it, because, you know, the situation and the circumstances are what they are, and we're going to be who we are, and we'll always play to the strengths of our team versus our opponents. You know, what do we have to do to win the game? Every game, there's a recipe to win the game. What does that, you know, what's an offensive game plan look like to help the defense or vice versa, and special teams, and they all have to fit together harmoniously to help you win. That's the recipe, and that last week was a great example of that. I don't know that they go, well, let's carry the weight, you know, with burden of this, because Jason's own right's been playing pretty good, and you did a great job of, you know, handling that game, right? And again, to do what we do and to do that and orchestrate, and he's making decisions in every snap, right? So I don't know that they say that per se. You know, collectively it was more, we need to bounce back after a, you know, a bad loss the right way, and they did.
Coach K.
Any questions? All right, thanks everybody.